What? That price is up front. Okay. She said that's why you get the discount. Otherwise, it's $111,000 a year. Thank you.
Mute. Recording and sound. Uh, hmm. Hello?
Hello.
Oh, good. Okay. So it is, I'm Susie Zimmett, President of the Aspen School Board. And we are beginning a regular board meeting of the Aspen School District. This is Friday, June 11th, 8:31. And Eliza, can we have a roll call to call the order, the meeting
to order.
to order?
Katie Frisch,
Present.
Susan Merle,
Here.
Jonathan Nickel,
I'm here.
Dwayne Romero,
Here.
and Susie Zimmett.
Here.
Thank you. You do.
And can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Nope, second.
moved.
I'm gonna go Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Merle,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero.
You
And-
said aye.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he's-
Susie Zimmett.
And aye. On to, we don't have any public comment, right, Eliza?
Correct. No public comment today.
Public comment. So we're going to 5 reports and comments, and this is 5.1 is very exciting. Dave, are we welcoming our new Aspen Elementary School principal? Dave.
We are, excuse me, we are, hopefully. We are welcoming Ashley Bodkin. We are finalizing Mrs. Bodkin's contract and, but conceptually, we have a new Aspen Elementary School principal. Ashley, are you on?
I am. I'm right here. Thank you, David, and thanks to the Board of Education. I am so excited to be taking on this new role in Aspen as your principal. And I'd like to see the familiar faces that I got to meet when I was at my site visit just this past week. It was a really amazing opportunity for me to learn more about the school and get to know members of the leadership team, as well as some of the teachers. I see Katie here, got to meet some of her students in her classroom, and am just
Katie.
absolutely thrilled to be joining this team here. So thank you.
And we're very thrilled to have you joining us. Just a quick couple words. Ashley's veteran elementary school principal joining us from Massachusetts. Had some great conversations with her superintendent and assistant superintendent, and her current district will be missing her greatly. And we wish them well in selecting Ashley's replacement. She's leaving really big shoes to fill, and we are very thrilled to have her joining us here in Aspen. We're hoping for a start mid-July, and they have to effect a move and that sort of thing. But we're working closely with Ashley already to get her squared away and smooth out her entry into our Aspen learning community. So welcome, Ashley. We're very excited.
Thank you. And I do look forward to meeting all of you individually throughout this summer as I, once I get out there and as I begin my kind of entry plan in. So thank you. Thanks, David.
Great. Thank you for jumping on today. And we know you're still in session and we don't want to hold you up. So we put you at the forefront of the agenda. So we
I
wish
appreciate
you well
it.
and a successful closing.
I appreciate it. One of the things that is on the agenda today is that I'm going to sit in a dunk tank from noon until 3. And the students are very excited. This is a really special event for them. We're doing an ABC countdown to summer, and today is T for tanked. So I'm getting dunked in the dunk tank. So got to go switch into my bathing suit and maybe even wetsuit because it's pretty cold here. So take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank-
Yeah, thank you. And we just also want to welcome Julie Ramey, who is not here today, but will be joining us as the new assistant principal at Aspen Middle School. She has accepted a position offer, and we are excited to have her join. Both candidates went through an extensive and even exhaustive interviewing process, and we are thrilled that they'll be joining us. And so we have our administrators in place to ramp up for next school year. So thank you for that time, Madam President.
Thank you. And very exciting. 5.2 is the bond update. Damien Spar is on the call.
Good morning. I'm here on the call and my partner, Bob Daniel, is also on the call. Dr. Ball, we can either run this from your end, or I can bring up my last version of the presentation. Be happy to do either at your decision.
Probably better for you to drive.
Very
Eliza,
good.
we make sure we can screen share with Damien. You should be good to go, Damien.
Very good. I'm going to screen share and see how we do. Make sure I'm getting the right version here. Sometimes I get some struggles out of. So you may be seeing my my notes version. So I'm going to try to change that and make sure I'm getting the right. There we go. Are you seeing bond and agenda?
We are.
Okay, fantastic. So our agenda today is going to talk about some background, much of which most of you already know, about team members, about the bond language and the project areas that we're dividing the project into. We're going to give an update on work to date. We're going to talk about the budget and past and current projections, as well as provide an update by each project area. So we'll give details on housing, and we're going to give a prognosis by area. So that's going to be the feelings that Bob, Daniel, and I have about how this is going and what's going slower and what's going faster in one area and other areas. And we're going to finish up by talking about projection and actions and work this summer. So I'm going to talk about the presentation up into housing, and I'm going to turn that over to Bob Daniel at that time. So let's see if we can get this to work properly. Background on team members. So these are team groups. The process, of course, is led by the Board of Education. We have a facilities group and a housing subgroup that meet to advise the core project team on directions that they feel are appropriate or provide input on decisions. And they're really, they're groups, they're not committees. What we are relying on for our approval processes is the Financial Advisory Board and continued reporting through the facilities and housing group and subgroup, as well as the Board of Education as we proceed. Now, our core project team includes Aspen School District administrators led by Dr. Ball, Linda Warho, and Jorge Calderon. And also on our end, led by Bob Daniel and myself, regarding owners representation. And our design professional partners in Cunningham and Gilbert Sanchez are also part of that, and Carrie Ellen Mock, as well as Ben Wilking and Gilbert Sanchez, are always a part of that core project team. Importantly, and probably most importantly, we have design input groups. These design input groups include internal Aspen staff members that have input on the design of each of the project areas and each of the pieces of the project. And in some cases, we have external members where it's appropriate that we have external input and collaboration with some of the project areas. As my gift to you on Friday morning, I'm not going to read this ballot issue for a bond language to you, but I am going to point out that when the bond was approved, it centered around, it replaced outdated plumbing, HVAC, roofing systems, et cetera, to extend the useful life of building, address health, safety, and security upgrades, upgrade institutional technology, improve classrooms, science laboratories, libraries, performing arts spaces, create flexible and adaptive learning environments, including outdoor learning spaces, construct a new preschool and mixed use facility, and address energy efficiency upgrades district-wide. That was the general, that's my summary of the actual language for the bond language. So those pieces and the overall needs for the Aspen School District were then broken up into project areas that have been in existence prior to the bond issue. So when Bob Daniel and I joined the team, we kind of picked these project areas up and continued to use them. The language works well, and the ability to split the project into these areas, the overall bond initiative, also works well. The first initiative that we have is deferred maintenance. The second is safety and security upgrades. Importantly, we have classroom and learning environments, and those things get coupled very closely with net zero initiatives or our energy efficiency work. When we get into more programming heavy issues, we start to look at things like a new cottage. We also have a group for district theater and performing arts and athletics and recreation. Finally, we get into the issues that are more about the support areas for the district and less about the learning environment in the bus barn and site, the district offices, and very importantly at the bottom, and not only last because it's only its own subgroup really, is housing. I'm going to step back for a moment and talk about our general work to date, and then we're going to dive into each one of those project groups. Our general work to date has been the setting up of the project roles and groups that we reviewed, the setting up of the core team and determining how that core team was going to work and function with the financial advisory board and the facilities group and housing subgroups, and the setup of the actual design input groups and determining their role. We have held intake meetings and programming start for each project area. And I'll remind you at this point, in each project area, you'll have an intake meeting that starts to lay out goals and desires, wants and needs for what those projects could look like and how they would be designed. Programming is the beginning of design, where the spaces and the needs are outlined so that they can be formed in proximity to each other and set up so that a schematic design can occur. Schematic design is further detailed into a design development level, and then finally into a construction documents level that is prepared and nearly ready for construction, and then finally to construction documents. So we're at the early part of all of those processes. Some of the project groups have a little bit more jump start than others, and some project groups don't need quite that elaborate process, specifically things like deferred maintenance and safety and security. So speaking of deferred maintenance, we have developed an initial deferred maintenance scope of work for summer and fall of 2021. When you come back from summer break, there will be work that will have been completed using the bond funds for deferred maintenance. And that's set up to occur because we have engagement with a firm for general contract and construction management at risk for the summer and fall work. And Bob Daniel's going to talk a little bit more about that later on. We've also, and that engagement is that we have a recommendation ready for the facilities advisory group. So we've also worked with Kari Ellen and Gilbert Sanchez and their team to determine the list of additional sub-consultants and other consultants that we need that would either function under Cunningham or function under the district directly, mostly for the non-housing work. So when I say that we've got our list of sub-consultants together, some of the work, and Bob Daniel will report on some of the things going on in housing, that we've got some of our help enlisted and determined for housing, but the majority of what I'm talking about here is all non-housing facilities. Speaking of which, we have engaged a firm for the housing facilities condition assessment work, which means it's somebody's going to be going through those buildings to determine what needs to occur in each one to make repairs and bring them into a condition that matches the intention of the district and the bond fund usage. And several housing acquisitions have occurred with an offer on several other units currently pending. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about our bond budget areas. Originally, and this was at the time of bond development, and this is just under, this shows just under $95,000 or $1 million, $1,000 million, sure, a few orders of magnitude. Just under $95 million, we had a group one deferred maintenance allocation. And I'm saying allocation because we have needs in all of these areas that exceed the amount shown. But this is the allocation for priority use. So deferred maintenance allocation was $15 million. The housing and housing deferred maintenance value was $36 million. And the facility master plan priorities was nearly $44 million. Pardon me. In June of 2021, as we look at the needs for housing and we budget what we believe may be needed for housing improvements of current stock and further purchasing of new property, that housing budget increases to $50 million, which is about $14 million greater than originally proposed prior to the passing of the bond. The deferred maintenance amount stays the same at 15. There's a reduction proposed on facility and master plan priorities. And in all of that, the housing amount that is proposed is only proposed given our current understanding of the condition. And it doesn't mean that we'll necessarily spend that much money. Obviously, the amount of money not spent would funnel back in to the facility master plan priorities. However, the upside is that we have $20 million in unassigned bond funding. So there will be a discussion about whether or not we spend as much as $50 million on housing and where the $20 million in unassigned bond funding might go. The thing that's relatively consistent here is maintaining the idea that we would spend about $15 million in deferred maintenance. If you put that bond funding into the pie, you start to see something that looks like this and how that's split up. But I think that along with some things that we're going to talk about in a few minutes are going to be some of the larger issues that we talk about as a group and make decisions around. And having the $20 million in unassigned bond proceeds is probably the best problem that we have. I'm going to talk about work to date by project area, and you're going to hear some
Damien?
things. Yes,
Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
yes.
For some reason, my speaker's not working now. There I got it. Okay, no, I think I would like to start looking at that list instead of the buckets. It would be better to start talking about priorities. I mean, I think the buckets were a guideline and kind of our best guess at the time, but I
Mhm.
think it's more relevant to everyone here to really look at the key priorities and in terms of like must-haves. So must-haves are, keeping our current infrastructure up to date, keeping our current housing, up to date, and making sure that that current stock is there. And then, at least in my personal opinion, next priority is new housing. Because like you say, we're not going to have enough money. And I don't want to kid ourselves, and it's the same thing that I discussed with Dave last time, and what we talked about, and maybe not in this meeting, but in our housing committee. And we're going to see it here, we have some real good advances on that front, but we need to have a clear target as well. So those are things that we still need to go back and look at, but I think it would be good to also then have a list of priorities and then spending. Sound good?
It sounds very good. And in fact, I'm going to start to lead you down that path
Okay.
with some of the things that we talk about. I think what you said, certainly Bob, Daniel, and I are completely on board. And when we look at some of the things that were contemplated in the facilities upgrades, those are where we saw opportunities for potential cost reduction. For example, in a little bit, we're going to talk about the bus barn. So the idea was, well, we're going to build a new bus barn at a different site. And the prognosis on that is going to be, no, we're not. We're not going to spend our money that way because we need it in housing. And as of right now, and maybe this isn't the right thing to do, but as of right now, we just simply said, we're not going to reduce that deferred maintenance piece because that can't be reduced. We know that can't be reduced, but we know with the priorities outlined really just the way that you did, we know that we have to do that. And then we have to do the housing, and that beyond that, we have to be really smart about how we spend our money on facilities upgrades. So I'm going to tell you, well said, because we're aligned with that.
Okay, thanks.
Getting into deferred maintenance, what we have, we've toured the buildings. We actually have information available to us that we can go in every room of the building and look around like there's a camera in the room. We've done that work so that we can all assess the buildings remotely, really without having to be there, because we kind of took that snapshot a couple of months ago. We have selected the initial scopes, as we noted, for summer, fall, and we're coordinating with potential future work to avoid cost expenditure from rework in later projects in the locations of deferred maintenance. So for example, if we think that there's deferred maintenance in the district theater, for example, that would be either reworked, or we'd spend more money after we fixed it in a later project. We're coordinating that because we're not going to waste any money. Importantly, we issued an RFP and interviewed firms for this summer and fall 2021 work, and we have that recommendation ready for FAB. Again, I'm going to let Bob Daniel talk a little bit more about that. And our prognosis is that we are in a position now to proceed diligently with priority work in deferred maintenance. Things that require a significant amount of design, we're going to be able to get designed and installed. Things that require very little design, we're going to be able to start doing right away over the summer. And we're already coordinating that. We've coordinated that thought process and that planning during the interviews with our firms that Bob will talk about. In safety and security, we've held the initial input meetings. We have follow-up meetings coming this week, and we began to coordinate with other scopes. While this area needs more input, this area probably will follow closely with deferred maintenance and being able to proceed relatively quickly, as long as we're not doing safety and security work at a location where in the future we're going to make changes, and we will be very careful about that. Classroom and learning environments. We have held our initial input meetings and begun programming. We've again coordinated with other scopes. We've examined the high school library concept designs that were developed by a team at Aspen prior to the bond approval. So in this case, at the high school library, we have a jump on potentially what we can do for improvements there. The problem is that we will likely not do those improvements till the summer of 2022 anyway. We may, though, with a complete design, be able to start purchasing some furniture, fixtures, and equipment that can be used in the current library short term and then reused in the final design at the end of summer 2022. What you will find is that the bulk of the work that we're going to be able to accomplish is going to happen really from the spring through the fall of 2022. And that's potentially outside of new construction that we have in a couple locations, but really that's where the planning for all of this is going to head. Our net zero initiatives have occurred with initial input meetings. They have had a significant opportunity for student engagement. One of those sessions has occurred and has been quite successful. And major drivers here are to move from fuel to all electric power and to add solar. So while that is a general statement, that guiding principle allows us to do our work in other areas without really coloring outside of the lines. And I think the net zero initiatives that we have that fit into each project as to what the equipment is or the efficiencies and things, that portion is easy and will go quickly and diligently. The piece where we add solar and things like that will have its own path, and that will be a little bit further out in time, but I think will develop rather quickly. The new cottage. This particular project has had its input meetings and begun programming. There is some input from outside organizations, and what we are looking at right now is to take the needs of the school district, design around those so that we can have a project, and design the building in a way that if future funding occurs at another time by outside sources, that building could be expanded so that it could have more program area. And that way we can proceed with the work that we need to do and not close the door entirely on a collaborative process with another partner outside of the school district. That particular project is known to be new construction. In district.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that well. So does that mean that it's not being considered or in the scope of our funds?
In the scope of our funds, the needs of the district themselves are being considered at this time. Outside input and outside needs to grow that building to serve outside agencies outside of the district. That's what we're eyeing, to be able to say, if we design a building in a space like this, to start with, if we give it the ability to expand, if funding and decisions to make it bigger come during the design, it's easy to design. If it comes after the construction, it's easy to add on to at a later date. What we're trying to do is be able to set the district up to be able to move ahead on the project without having the need for a full commitment for additional space, and without having to fund that space without that commitment, but leave the door open. We're trying to provide a path to doing it sooner than later, but leaving the flexibility for expansion there. Does that sound Little,
Okay, I guess I think I understand now, but I would say two things worry me. One, when we said we're taking this, the district needs first before this, I consider this to be part of the district needs, because I think the early childhood education, all the studies that are out there, everything, I mean, this is something that is really important to the community and to the district overall, making sure that we have adequate facilities here and up-to-date ones. And so I think, that would be my issue there. And then, so then maybe what we need to do is, if we get back to that prioritization, then have a discussion as a board and come to an agreement on where that falls in, so you guys have clear guidance on that. And I'm not pretending that we should do that now, but I do think, at least Jonathan Nichols' personal opinion is, this is something very important. And I would like to understand why it couldn't be done with the original funds, or what we're prioritizing in front of this, so that we can just all be on the same page.
and I think that I'm not communicating this properly. We are looking at this as something that's very important for the reasons that you said. What we're trying to do is set it up so that it can be done quickly. And if there are and I'm talking about the Aspen program, the district program. So whatever that looks like, and I think the last I heard was that was about 18,000 square feet. If there are other interests that would like to be involved in that and make that program bigger, I don't want to close the door on them, but I want to get your 18,000 square feet designed and built ASAP, because we see that as a priority, and Dr. Ball has clearly communicated that as a priority. So I think we're thinking the way you are. I just don't think that I explained that as well as I should have the first time through.
Okay, understood.
I appreciate that. But what your point about whether that footprint and that building size grows from anything outside of the district's needs, that will require some discussion. And that's going to be a point, because right now what we're listening and hearing what could be the future, so that we leave the door open to it, but we're moving to get what the district needs as soon as we can, because building sooner than later gets those kids in, and we avoid continued escalation of costs.
So if I may, I think one of the points that's outstanding that everyone, I think, is either aware of or should be aware of, is that there is a push toward universal preschool in Colorado, and that could be a requirement for students to show up at preschool, meaning our community could need more preschool spaces. And I think that's what Damien is speaking about as to other interests, and leaving the flexibility for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity, because that is part of my concern, and I don't want to shortchange us when we're doing what we need to do for the district proper. But as I said, we don't want to close the door on a community need that we may need to make the facility bigger, either during design or as an immediate phase 2, or however that may work. So, but the cottage itself and what goes in that program is one of those highest priority needs that Jonathan Nichol mentioned.
Yeah, and Damien, Dave Baugh here. We did just get information as to how we could actually run a study to get a more professional sense of what we need. We just got that this week from Shirley Ritter with the city, which she's been very helpful in terms of information and feedback for thinking about, the cottage and programming in the cottage. So it's definitely a work in progress. It's definitely a high priority. And as Damien said, we're continuing to think about it in a couple of ways, like what do we need right out of the gate? And then if we're going to grow it, what can we add on to it? But we would definitely love to get the program under one roof and out of trailers. So that's definitely a real interest of the district.
Thank you, Dr. I appreciate that. with the district theater and performing arts, this is another category of work where there are outside organizations that have some significant interest, and obviously the scope and the needs of different organizations and the funding that goes with them are integral. So my concern, and I think that I'm sharing the concern of the core project team, is that this is the area of work that probably has the most variables, and it doesn't have the immediate ability to have room for expansion or not. This unlike the cottage, is going to require more of a global solution so that it can be determined and built, and there'll be less opportunity to add on to it later than building a cottage where we have the ability to expand that building and that program. So I see the discussion around district theater and performing arts being critical in that nature. There are some things in deferred maintenance that we are looking at doing as soon as we can, provided again that there is no danger that we're going to have rework and expenditure of unnecessary funds because of rework later in the district theater and performing arts area. Athletics and recreation. The work that's we're looking at in athletics and recreation has probably the smallest allocation to it, and it will need more input, but I think we're going to be able to move diligently with that also, because it will require limited design. If we get into any kind of permitting issues or anything that's a little bit strange, it could take the project timeline and push it out a little bit. But I think that athletics and recreation will be able to get some attention relatively quickly, and certainly in the summer of 2022. The bus barn and site, as I had mentioned earlier, while we had initial input meetings and began programming, one thing that Bob Daniel and I kind of came to a conclusion about really early was that relocation to another site is not pragmatic because of, one, the nature of what's there, two, reusing the existing site as something else after it's been a bus barn, and three, the costs and using the cost to build something brand new at a different location versus staying where we are and modifying that. So right now we are seeing this as a cost avoidance to keep the bus barn where it is and develop other program around that location, especially in view of looking at funding for housing and the things that Jonathan Nickel noted as priority in the way that we talked before. So while that thought process can be changed on our part, that's the way we're looking at this particular issue right now. District offices. The district offices are integral with a lot of other pieces of the pie here. And one thing that we're trying to not do is build a whole lot of brand new space on a brand new site, et cetera, where costs go up a lot for the construction of district offices. If there are places that we could put the program within buildings that make sense, we like that idea, and we're looking at the idea of, can it be combined with the cottage or bus barn work so that we get some really economy of scale with constructing the district offices. That, because of the nature of what it is, it's not the highest priority, but it's an important thing to do. It's going to take some work and some diligence to find the right spot for this and to create a situation where we feel that we're spending the right amount of the bond funds for this particular allocation.
Just a question on this. Oh. Sorry, going back to the priorities, and maybe Dave can talk about this. What is it that drives us to need to relocate the district offices?
Well, there's actually no driving need to relocate the offices. That was something that emerged prior. I think the thinking was that the functional main entrance of the high school is actually coming off of the parking lot. And so there was some thinking before we got here, before this project got started, that the offices would move, the high school offices would move more or less into where the district offices are. And, this is still a conversation piece, but it's not a high priority by any stretch. And in fact, we've discussed making this one of the lowest priorities in the project. I mean, it would be nice and it would make some sense, but it's not the highest priority. And we're still in the discussion stages of this, and we'll probably still be, moving the chess pieces around next fall as we try to figure out the best layout for the high school offices. The highest priority is to make something that makes sense for the kids, for the teachers, and for the administrators who are directly working with kids and teachers. So that was the original thinking. And so we were just
Yeah.
kind of
Hey, Dave.
following that line of thought.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Dave. Yeah, thanks, Susie. Dave, just to build on that, I believe that, and we got Gilbert and Kari Ellen on the phone call as well, but a couple of years ago, we were looking at the expansion into the district offices as a really easy, efficient way to expand learning spaces for the high school. And to your point about kind of correcting the front door, so to speak, and recognizing that the district use there might be better served somewhere else in order to optimize just the functional educational capabilities of the building for the benefit of learning spaces, for the kids. Kind of an easy thing since it's already under the same roof. So that's the thought process. And I just would probably ask the board here for a little bit of discretion for a second, or if you will, just going to allow Damien to kind of run through this thing instead of deep diving on some particular points here. We got to run through a bigger agenda, and I've got a hard stop in another 45 minutes. I'd like to get to some of the other items that are on this agenda today.
Yeah. And to that point, Dwayne, I just suggest we continue to run through this presentation, and then if board members have questions, they can certainly, call me or, join our weekly bond planning meetings on Mondays, and we can answer a lot of these questions there. But good suggestion, Dwayne.
At this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Bob Daniel, who will talk about housing and round out things that we're going to be doing this summer. Bob?
Thank you, Damien. Madam President, members of the board, I realize I have a negative 12 minutes to get through the balance of this presentation, so I'm not going to be able to achieve that, but I'll be as quick as I can. Major efforts that we've undertaken to date is to first get our hands around the inventory we have. We have engaged McKinstry, who did the facilities assessment for the balance of the district, to start that process. I've had an intake interview with them, or an intake update. We've got some information to get back. We're looking to schedule that for early in July. I'll remind the board and others participating that we have 50 existing units spread across multiple properties. That comprises about 102 bedrooms within those units. They're in 11 different locations. So it is a bit of a challenge to manage these, but we know the district is making some headway towards that. Recently, there's been housing inventory additions to the program. We've got, with these additions, we now are at 65 total units and 116 bedrooms. Those acquisitions have predominantly 210 West Main, acquiring the other side of the Northridge duplex in Snowmass Village, and then raw land or to be developed lots in Southside. So we've spent about $3.9 million to date. We understand or have as a target for the district to look at doubling our existing units and bedrooms to be able to provide housing for teachers that are coming into the district or that might currently be in the district. That would take us to approximately 100 units and approximately 200 bedrooms. Just talking a little bit about that analysis, that will be completed before September. There's quite a bit of deferred maintenance on these residences. We have some infrastructure to deal with on some of these developments. We have just put in an internal budget of about $5 million into the housing allocation for the updating of our current inventory. The other thing that we're getting through this McKinstry study, and I would note it's also the same thing that we're looking for district campus facilities, is an assessment of all of the systems and functions of the properties so that the district can properly reserve in the future for an ongoing maintenance program, so that we don't end up in the circumstance where we have so much deferred maintenance and we're caught needing a bond issuance to deal with maintenance, and we're a little more proactive as a district. So that'll be something that we're bringing to the board, the Financial Advisory Board, as well as the Board of Education, to really start to treat these assets in a way that maintains them over time and doesn't allow them to get into the current situation they're in. Next slide, please. I know there are members of the housing subgroup that have been working with us that are board members, but just to bring the board in general up to date, we have an acquisition opportunity, and on your agenda for later on this morning is the approval of executing a contract for the purchase of 7 units totaling 18 bedrooms at the former Poppy's property right there by the Forest Service on the way into town. The strike price on this is, I think, it's a good deal for the district. We're looking at $370,000 per bedroom, and that's the same that was expended on the 210 West Main Street. And if you just sort of look at the context of being able to deliver a bedroom for $370,000 in our market, land inclusive, completed in place, I think it's a really, really good opportunity for the district. And at least from our owner's representative team, we highly recommend that the district move forward with this acquisition. This is a property that could be in service for the school year 21-22. It's not yet completed, it's under construction. We will be able to inspect and observe the balance of the construction as it goes forward. The general contractor who's building this is one of good reputation, good quality, and I think, yeah, it presents a great opportunity for the district. Next slide. Please don't pay attention to the colors; they've been changed. But most of you know this hard corner on Hallam and right along the S curves. So this is the redeveloped Poppy's property. Next slide, please. One of the things that is very poignant for those of us that are on your team working on this project is an understanding of really where we are in terms of a timeline. And this will get to the sort of the next recommendations that comes from your team as well as from the housing subgroup. The way the bonds are put together and is explained to us through your CFO, Linda Warho, is we really have a requirement to commit those bond funds by 2024 and are required to spend them by 2026. I think this is especially significant as it relates to the housing opportunities and the housing goals for the district. I think everyone knows that timelines for design and construction are quite extensive in our community. And so one of the things that this timeline tells us, the district should look at opportunities for acquisitions much more than development of its own. Certainly the district has lands that may be able to facilitate some additional development. But the fact of this timeline in our community and the opportunities leads us to one of the recommendations from the housing subgroup. Next slide, please. Which is really our strategy moving forward, is to continue to pursue opportunities to purchase existing inventory, to look at partnering opportunities potentially with other governmental or quasi-governmental agencies. But really for the district, we want to be in control of our inventory and not be sort of subject to others' timelines and others' circumstances. And then probably the biggest opportunity that lay before the district today is to purchase employee housing that developers in town are having to create for their own mitigation. There's several opportunities that fall into this vein. That's one of the aspects of the 834 West Hallam property. And it's really led us to look at this opportunity to look at getting new housing that's constructed in a good manner, reputable contractors, and with someone else, frankly, taking the risk. It's not our recommendation that the school district be in the development business. We think that there are others that are in that space that we can sort of climb on their backs through acquisitions at proper pricing in order to help achieve the goals that the district has to get to this doubling their current inventory. I'll talk a little bit about this. The beginning work on the initial deferred maintenance, Damien mentioned that earlier. We are getting our hands around what can be accomplished in the summer of 2021. We've been working with Jorge Calderon, your director of facilities, on what are those most important projects. Also, as Damien mentioned earlier, looking on those projects that would not impact our ability to execute on future projects. The current circumstances in the construction world and the procurement of materials and equipment world, with the post-COVID conditions, we really see extended timelines. So we're going to really focus on projects that we feel like we can get done in 2021, not take unnecessary risk for the district. And so what that means is we'll be doing a lot of planning for 2022. I mentioned completing the housing facilities condition assessment. We'll continue our work on housing acquisition and working with the housing subgroup. Damien mentioned the programming and starting design so that we can look at summer 22 being, if you will, one of the peak work summers. Probably that's definitely going to extend into other years or subsequent years. We're working on getting all of these scope areas defined. I think specifically, Jonathan, to some of your questions relative to what and where and why. Those are questions that we need to answer this summer. We're bringing on board sub-consultants. Simple example is the school district has no existing survey of its existing facilities, a physical property survey. So we're engaging a surveyor to come out and assess all and identify all of the existing lands and improvements that the district owns there on the Maroon Creek campus. And then obviously we'll be working forward with the design and work as approved by the various subcommittees and as necessary, running it through the financial advisory board. Next slide, please.
I think that has us at our end.
Yeah, it does. I'll give one more comment just to update the board on where we are with selecting a general contractor. We went through an RFP process. We had 3 contractors respond to that RFP. We had FCI Constructors, we had Shaw Construction, we had Hazelden Construction, all respond. We held interviews this week with those 3 contractors. We have been, the RFPs were really set up in a way to understand their cost structure as well as their experience, both with new projects as well as with deferred maintenance and remodel or retrofit projects. We concluded, or I concluded this morning, actually reference checks on the contractors. And we have a final recommendation that we're not ready to bring to the board because we want to come back and just talk to our team on Monday, real quick, the internal team, before we come up with a formal recommendation. But we're very, we're right on the cusp of being able to make that recommendation and move forward with that general contractor. And I would say 3 very qualified contractors, 3 very well thought out proposals, 3 great interviews. And I don't think the district could go wrong with any of them, but we will have a specific recommendation that we'll take to our bond planning group on Monday and then move forward from there. So I'm glad to answer any questions on this portion of the presentation, if there are any from any board members.
I think we have to defer questions right now because Dwayne has to leave at 10 and we want to discuss the master bargaining agreement review. Thank you very much. And we do have questions, but we just can't do them now. Dave, when would be a good time for us to ask our questions, or what should we do about the fact that we do have some questions, but we can't address them now?
Well, if board members would, capture them, write them down, and then I can take them to our bond planning meeting on Monday, and then we can craft answers to those questions, and we can also post them on the website so that the public can see the questions as well as the responses. That would be best if you send them to myself and Eliza. We'll put them into one document. And in fact, actually, Eliza, why don't you create a Google Doc, share it with the board. They can put their questions in there. Then we can craft the answers that way with the team. And then that way we can keep both this meeting as well as the summer work moving forward, effectively.
Great. Thank you so much, Bob and Damian. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's move to 5.5, the master bargaining agreement review, and I'll turn it to Dave. Thank you.
Great. And thank you, Susie. Eliza, if you would begin driving, that would be great, the presentation. We'll probably follow a similar format here. I'll share the slides. The Aspen Education Association and I worked on this presentation yesterday. And, a master agreement is something that this district has been kind of thinking about for at least 20 years. And, we feel that a master agreement makes everybody's life a little bit better. And I believe it makes a superintendent's life better. I believe it makes the association's life better. And I do believe it helps the board with their governance approach. So it lays out, simply speaking, it lays out clear expectations and procedures that govern the workplace environment for all in the organization. It's a openness and transparency thing. And next slide, please. And agreements build trust. Most people in the business world use agreements. In this case, it builds trust between administrations and teachers, between teachers and the Board of Education, and the administration and the Board of Education. And candidly, agreements are as much for administrators as they are for teachers and staff. It builds the rules of the road. We keep talking about trying to attract and retain top level talent, and we believe that having a master agreement helps with that. when teachers and administrators are evaluating districts as possible places to work, they often want to see the master agreement. And once this is ratified, it would be on the district website. Good agreements over time help build stability and strengthen relationships between all parties. And, we keep talking about our matching school districts, Cherry Creek, Summit, Eagle, Steamboat, Telluride, they all have master agreements and they all do pretty well. We do too, but we think this will help us do even better. It was a lengthy process to get here. We began, tentative initial conversations in March, followed by meetings almost weekly, sometimes even more. There were at least 9 iterations of the agreement. The association made a proposal. We countered the following week and on and on and on. The significant additions to this agreement from what we were doing anyway was that we just kind of captured a section on, the wellness benefits. That's Article 15, personnel files. Let me stop at wellness article. The wellness benefits to our community have not been touched in years. And so we did touch them and update them a little bit. We even had a robust discussion about incentivizing moving towards alternative forms of transportation, mass transit, e-bikes, bicycles, even walking if you could do it. We didn't quite get there, but it remains a discussion, and it's part of our net zero efforts. Former HR director Dan Blumberg spent a whole lot of time in personnel files. I know it'll come as big surprise to this group that how we handled personnel files was inconsistent at best and dubious at worst. So we really wanted to standardize that. That's Article 7. A clear grievance process, Article 10, was also important. And one of the nice things about having a clear grievance process is that, you can support or deny grievances if they're not addressed within this agreement. There had been some traditions of sabbatical leave, and we put a lot of guardrails around sabbatical leave in Article 12. The superintendent retains full control over sabbatical. Sabbatical was originally designed for a time when there was no online learning, and it was much harder to get professional development, especially in rural areas where you would have to travel great distances to get to a university or college. So we updated that, we refreshed it, and we created an opportunity for the district to recover that investment should an employee leave after taking a sabbatical. For the most part, this agreement is grounded in policy and state and federal law, and it is designed and meant to foster increased collaboration among the parties. There are 22 articles in this agreement. As I said earlier, it's comprised of existing board policy and or state and federal law. Because of the time frame and simply, the requested scope, we needed to create some memorandums of understanding. And this is work that we're going to address over the next few years, none of which will be approved or become a part of this agreement without full ratification by both Aspen Education Association members as well as the Board of Education here. So these are projects that we want to address, and they are actually longstanding systemic shortcomings that we do need to address. Next slide, please. It's important for the public to understand that this is a living document. Annually, it's going to be touched. Under Colorado school code or law, we have to address the financial piece every year anyway, because of the vagaries of public school funding in Colorado. We can't commit to a multi-year financial package. Many states in the Northeast and Northwest do commit to that, but it would be unwise for us to even attempt that lift here in Colorado. I do want to say thanks to the negotiation teams. I mean, this agreement represents candidly a whole lot of time invested in this, and a lot of good faith efforts and on both sides, and it was a process. And so I definitely want to say thank you to both negotiation teams for your efforts. And I would like to open it up to the board for questions and concerns. And we do have the association leadership on to help answer any questions. So this is kind of a working session, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our thinking around this, as well as take any questions from any members of the board.
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Romero.
Dwayne. Oh, yeah, go, Dwayne.
Thanks, Susie. Real brief. And Dave, thanks for that overview, and thanks to the, like you just described, thanks to both teams for a lot of heavy lifting here and achieving that which we've been trying to achieve for many years. So bravo. My one question has to do with the term, and you just described how we are not able to bind salaries and benefits past a 1-year window. The rest of the body of the agreement does, however, carry a 3-year, I think, initial term. I'm not offended or upset with that. I'm just curious, is that binding future boards in any way in terms of the terms and the conditions that we are setting ourselves into for this particular agreement? And if not, just give a quick little snapshot there so the public can hear that as well. Thanks.
Certainly. It is a 3-year agreement, and it is, as I mentioned, grounded in current board policy. If either side, either the association or the administration/board, were desirous of changing any of the articles, there is a meet and discuss provision. There is an MOU piece. So anytime things come up over the course of time, and you meet, you discuss, you negotiate it, and then you capture it through the MOU process. So nothing in here has financial impact to future boards in that sense, Dwayne. It's not committing to, say 3% a year for all staff for the next 3 years. I mean, there are contracts like that in the country. They are not in Colorado. I want to be very clear about that. The other thing is, this is existing policy or state and federal law, and state and federal law always trump master agreements. So any provision in here that is not in alignment with the law is automatically, it's out. And that would be, also part of the meet and discuss. Article 4, general provisions, that's no longer in keeping with Colorado state law. That no longer applies. Next year's agreement would be, printed electronically to reflect that. Does that answer the question?
I would also add, Dwayne, that it provides continuity for everyone. So I would look at it less as restricting people and more just providing continuity as turnover happens, because we all know that happens.
Next question. Any hand raised? Jonathan, Katie, Susan?
Yep.
I wanted to hopefully hear from AEA. If there's, what you guys' thoughts are on this, and, how you think it's going to benefit both the district and overall just improve our shared vision.
Sure. I think it builds trust between the members and the association, and then also the administration and the association, and also the Board of Education and the association. So I think our main goal in this agreement was to come to agreement that we could all get behind and get around and feel good about. And I think that they are agreements that hold us accountable and hold you accountable and are a great compromise and agreement. I think this year was all about communication and finding a pathway to work together in a kind and respectful way. And I think this agreement just fosters that. I think this agreement shows that we were able to, quite frankly, come together in a negotiations process that was quite honestly inspiring. And I'm not being cheesy. Was actually pretty honored to be in the process, and it was really great to be heard by the administration. It was really great to be heard by the Board of Education on the things that we believe in this district and the things that we want to agree to better our education of our children. And I think that was the most inspiring thing to me, is that we were able to be heard and also communicate together and really hear what the administration wanted to agree to, and really hear what the association wanted to agree to. And I'm really, really proud of the work that was done. It was one of the most inspiring things I've done at this school district, to be honest. And I think it really showed that we were committed to a common goal. And that is very hard. It's hard when we try to do a vision for the district. It's hard when we try to do a vision for a building. And this was a vision that came together and was pretty succinct. So I hope that kind of answers your question. And, not to be melodramatic, but like I said, it was honorable, and it was a great experience, I think, for everyone.
I agree completely with what Stephanie said. It was truly awesome to watch everybody to come together and to truly build better relationships, to come to a much clearer understanding of what all of us were looking for. It was awesome. And our membership is firmly in support of this, Jonathan. We had 125 yes votes, 125 votes, and no opposed to this agreement from our members. And that was in less than 48 hours that we got all of those votes in. So this is what our members want. And we are incredibly excited to be at this point. So thank you for your time.
I have a question. I have a question, Susie, for back to Marnie and Stephanie. How many members do you have right now, and with 125 votes? And what efforts did you go through to help them understand what this very complicated legalese document means? Because it's not, if you've never read a legal document, it can be extremely difficult to try to get through. What did you guys do with your membership to help them understand what this all means?
We have 170 members. So we got 125, like Marnie said, all yes votes out of 170 members.
So
we
50
started
so 50 didn't vote.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
So we
So
have
2/3 of your membership voted on it.
correct. And
actually
we started off-
3/4. We had 76% of members voted.
Okay.
Correct. So we started off this process by communicating probably bi-weekly on what the process looked like. And we started out by forming the team, making sure that we had representatives from voices all over the district. We formed the negotiations team. We communicated with the members in terms of the fact that we were working with our legal representation as well. So we communicated the process, like I said, pretty much bi-weekly. We had information sessions. We held information sessions. We did a question document where members could ask legal questions and also, have access to some of the articles. We talked about what the process looks like in terms of it being passed back and forth. We decided to go for a traditional negotiations format instead of IBB or IBS, if you're familiar with that. So we educated our members on the negotiation process in terms of like what Dave said. We started with a draft and we passed it back and forth. It was a living document draft that all of us were able to access. The members were then, after we got to a place in negotiations where we had some tentative agreements, we scheduled time with members. We communicated with them, like I said, at that point, probably more than bi-weekly on updates. And then we had some sessions where we went through the document where they could look at the different articles and think about what questions they may have or how that would affect them and what we would do moving forward. So we just spent a lot of time communicating. In fact, yesterday we had a member who came up to us and said it was communicated very well and they understood it. And that was really, really important to us, that they do understand that it's a legal binding document and that the legalese sort of gets lost in the weeds sometimes, and how to navigate that and what that looks like for them and for you as well.
Okay. And Dave, back at you. If you could explain to the public what kind of interactions we've had with our council, just to make sure that people understand that this is not that this was a
Sure,
well thought out.
Katie. Yeah, we of course internally reviewed every proposal at length between our negotiations team, and then when we were starting to get close to a significant number of tentative agreements, we started sharing it with Richard Bump, the district solicitor, and he has a managing partner who does a lot of school agreement law in Colorado, and so they reviewed it. Mr. Blumberg and I met with them virtually several times, and once in person with Mr. Bump, but they reviewed it. We discussed any kind of concerning clauses. We grounded it in current practice of how we manage the district. And so it's had extensive legal review moving forward. The other thing we did is we crosswalked it against 3 other contracts on the Western Slope. And ours is very similar to their contracts or agreements. So Summit, Eagle, and I believe Lake County were our comparators. So, and our council has had a lot of work with those districts as well. Does that answer your question? It's been reviewed extensively by legal.
Thank you.
And there's nothing that is, onerous or tying our hands and from a superintendent's perspective, I think it's a useful document for moving forward.
Susan, or would you have some questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm just excited and impressed with the process and glad to hear that it was so collaborative. And I really am just happy to hear that it has come this far, and it does create trust, and it does create a great working relationship going forward. And so I think that's a real positive.
Jonathan, final questions or comments? Or Dwayne in the meantime, any more? Oh, you're good. Okay. So Jonathan, you're getting some sound, right? There you go.
Yeah, okay, sorry. No, I don't have any other questions, just comments. Thank you to the team who got this done. I talked to several AEA members, and they expressed to me the same enthusiasm that was expressed by the leadership. So I'm very pleased with that. I'm also very pleased that in the MOU, there is a commitment to finally work on the salary schedule and get the chronic issues solved that Dave had discussed earlier. So that I'm really happy about that. And the great thing is that when I've seen these be successful, they are tools for collaboration and improvement of the climate. And that has been the clear feedback that I've gotten from everybody. The one ask I have of the group is that just like we talked about earlier, somebody commented, is Katie as well, the education of this moving forward, and especially there are some things there that that discuss parents and things in the document that it's important for us to have spaces for them to understand what this means. And so that we can all be on the same page, and as well as Dave with the staff to make sure they clearly understand what their obligations are, and that there's a good understanding of what really needs to be, how this needs to be managed. Because like Katie said, it's legal. And so there's a lot of things that are kind of if buts in the legal world. So you need to have a lot of good education around the document and then how to manage it. And that's all I got to say. Great work by the team.
Great. So you mentioned that you have 170 members. Are there any teachers who are not members? About how many, Marnie? You don't know, or Stephanie, or any of?
Well,
It
how many
depends.
employees do we have and how many members do we have? That's an easy.
But admin can't be members, so you'd have to go, I think we have around 260 employees, but I'm not quite sure contractually if they would be allowed in AEA. So we'd have to look at those numbers. It's a handful from each, it's a handful of teachers from each building. And it varies for various reasons. And it changes month to month. They are, our membership is fluid.
So Dave, can you just address, before Dwayne has to run, what about the ones who are not members? I'm just kind of ignorant how those who are not members, the handful at each school, how are they impacted or not impacted by this agreement?
Sure, I can take a stab at that. Actually, all the employees in the district benefit from this agreement. There was landmark legislation 2 years ago called Juno, and it says that you don't have to be a member to benefit from the agreement. The association has represented members and non-members in my year in meetings with administration, regardless. So they do extend that to them as a professional courtesy from AEA. That being said, there's no downside to not being a member of the association. It's actually a significant savings to that person to not join AEA. But what this does is it protects every person in the district from one-off handshake deals and agreements. And if we were to do something outside of this agreement, that MOU process that I discussed earlier has to go through that process. We can't keep cutting one-off deals. And that is why every single person in the district benefits from this agreement. And as Stephanie said, if someone wants to be a member, they can join, and the deduction from their salary occurs in the next pay. And if they want to leave the association, they can just notify the payroll, and the deduct stops in the next pay. And in fact, we've had members join, leave, join, leave, join, all in the same year, and it's that fluid. So it's really up to the individual person as to whether they see the benefit and appreciate the benefit of supporting AEA.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think we have to go to the voting agenda before Dwayne leaves, unless Dwayne, you're happy to skip that portion, but should we go to action items? And we can come back if we have further discussion, but we have budget adoption 6.2, master bargaining agreement 6.3, board meeting calendar 6.4, draft of 22-23 draft calendar 6.5, and resolution to buy real estate 6.6. We also have a consent action agenda. So if we go to 6.2, is there any discussion about budget adoption. I hope everybody has had a chance to review that. Can we, I don't want to assume that all of these will be approved, but I just want to, if there's no objection, then let's talk about master bargaining agreement. Do we feel that we can put these all in a single action item? If there's no objection, I'll move on to the next one. The board meeting calendar 21-22. If there is no objection, and I'm looking, then we can go and see if we'll put them all with draft calendar 22-23. Any objection? I see none. And then resolution to buy real estate, West Hallam. If I see no, Dwayne, go ahead.
Appreciate you working through this, but I think by statute, we're going to have to, by the importance of these action items, I think we're going to have to call an individual vote and get a voice vote for each one. Unlike the consent agenda, whereby we can, oftentimes administrative matters can be assembled and have one voice vote in its entirety. But it looks like you've got good momentum here, so we can just kind of process through moves and seconds, discussions, and then votes quickly on each one of these items, I believe, based on all the previous conversations we've had.
Great, just don't run away until we're done. 6.2 budget adoption. Do I have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
I admit, yeah, and I would second that.
And
And then I just have to get the yes and no's. Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Wayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimmett.
aye.
Okay, then could we get a first and a second motion to approve the master bargaining agreement?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the master bargaining agreement as presented to the board here this morning with no additional edits or revisions.
I'll second.
Okay, real quick, Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero, and
Aye.
Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
Okay, I'll just move quickly on to the next one. The 21-22 board meeting calendar. Can we get a first and a second motion to approve as presented?
So
I'd
moved.
make that motion to approve the 21-22.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. Katie Frisch,
I'll second.
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
Okay, moving along. Approve the 22-23 draft calendar as presented. Can I get a first and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero, Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
And the last one we all have to vote on for this one is the contract to buy real estate, 834 West Hallam. May I get a first and a second?
Can I get just one question, just real quick? Because these are under construction, I just have a question about how that works if we're acquiring them in mid-construction, and is it just a cutoff? Like we take over, or they're coming fully constructed? Just a clarification there.
It's my understanding that it's the latter. That is to
Okay.
say, they're going to deliver completed product, and then that's when we'll close on the deal.
Okay, that's what I needed.
Dave, you probably can confirm.
Just confirming that these are completely finished units.
Okay,
So we have earnest money down, we have a purchase agreement, but it is contingent upon satisfactory inspection, certificate of occupancy
okay, great.
upon construction.
That's all I needed.
Okay,
All right.
so
I'd make that motion to approve the buy and sale real estate at 834 West Hallam as presented to the board this morning.
Second.
Eliza?
Sorry, always on mute. Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
Thank you. And then Susie, do you just want to jump into the consent action items?
Yes. Let's keep going.
Okay.
do we have a motion? We have 3 items, personnel, lift mask mandate, and donations.
I move to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Okay, Katie Frisch,
Aye.
Susan Marolt,
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
Thank you.
1 minute to spare before Dwayne has to leave.
Nice work.
So
And I've got a debrief.
Oh, you want to debrief? Why don't you debrief now? As far as we've done, we're
It's
almost.
fine, it's fine.
No, go ahead, debrief.
It's fine. Yeah. Well, all right. So real brief. Great process and a great amount of work going into the board meeting in terms of the amount of documents and agreements that we've been trying to work through. And also, during the board presentations, we probably collectively, and I know I'm just as guilty of this from time to time, to allow presenters to kind of work through their materials so that we can have an orderly set of questions afterwards, unless, of course, the board president wants to conduct it in a different way or different format, and that's helpful. But other than that, I'm just super proud to be part of this board in this district. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we've also accomplished a lot, and we've got a lot to be collectively proud of across the entire organization. Bravo.
Thank you. And I know Marnie has her hand up. Marnie?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to take a moment of personal privilege to thank Chris Baston. I believe this will be his last board meeting with us. And Chris has served us for, I believe, 6 years now, and has done an incredible amount of work for our district. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank him.
Thank you, Marnie, and thank you, everyone. It's been my honor.
Our honor to have had you all this time. Thank you for loaning yourself to us for 5 years, 6 years, 5 years? 5.
Five.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Dave.
While we have Chris, I just want to piggyback on Marnie's comments. And, I haven't been here nearly as long as Chris, but it has been a real pleasure and joy to work with Chris under his leadership and, with Sarah and the entire elementary school. I think it's important to recognize they stayed open, and they got us through the pandemic, and they set the bar high for the rest of the district. And, Chris was a real go-to for me as one of the new faces in leadership here in the district. I relied heavily on Chris's insight, suggestions, and leadership. So Chris, I personally wish you well, as does everybody on this call.
Thank you.
So we could go back now that we're not in such a hurry, or we could just keep going forward to look at our future agenda items.
Well, Susie, there's a couple of things that were prepared at the education update
Yes.
that I think would be, there's
I'm
work
happy
into
to
that.
give that. The education committee met for its second organizational meeting. We're still working on a purpose. We had some suggestions such as ensuring academic preparedness, not only for post-secondary education, but also making sure students acquire the necessary skills, knowledge, and foundations to meet their potential at each grade level. But we really wanted, Dave was unable to attend that meeting, and we really want to do we want to know how we can best help him. We want to come up with a purpose that makes the most sense for getting what needs to be done that's not getting done now. So at our next meeting, we will hopefully finalize the purpose for the education committee, and then we can start really getting the work done. Dave, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Susie, and that's very helpful. And additionally, we have an update for the community and for the board. We've been working hard based on the board authorized curriculum audits, and we've been working incredibly hard with our middle school math folks, as well as our K-8 literacy folks. And we have a short presentation that we'd like to make at this point. Should take about 10 to 15 minutes max. Mr. Mulberry, if you'd like to begin driving.
Farron, I can also drive. Oh, you got it. Perfect.
Are you muted, Theron?
I was. So here we are. So can you guys see the presentation?
We can.
Perfect. Okay. So there's 3 things that we would like to update you on today. Mainly what we're doing now is, I know that the board has had a lot of opportunity to see some of the presentations we had around our literacy adoption or the illustrative math piece with the middle school and IB. Today, what we're going to do is actually show you that after we've made those decisions, what it's going to cost. And so we're going to go through and just share some of that information with you today. So very first things that we'd like to talk about are the materials we had from Wit and Wisdom and Foundations and ARC. And I just want to review with you some of the materials costs that will happen there. So right now, one of the great things we can do with Wit and Wisdom is they'll give us a quote for 6 years. I'd like to point out that a 1-year quote around this same materials is $119,000. So you get a very deep discount if you commit for a longer term of time. And we're currently looking at around $234,000 and for materials and $13,000 for the accompanying PD. Foundations, $32,000 for the materials and $23,000 for the accompanying PD, and all of which were very important to the members as we went through and made the decisions on going with these companies, is figuring out what we want to do with that, how that was going to roll out. And one of the big factors in that is just making sure that we have that embedded PD as a piece of it as well. The ARC quote is still being negotiated, and that will be the 6th to 8th grade piece. It's great to have Amy on board at the middle school. She can be a part of those conversations now as we start moving into what that is going to look like. And I'd just like to point out that with Wit and Wisdom and the Foundations materials, we had the entire elementary school staff in support of it. And we had great support from Chris and Sarah and Lori Anderson in really developing what that looks like. So any questions about this side at this time?
Yeah, is that 234,000? Is that in this year's current budget, or is that spread out then over 6 years?
It'll have to be an upfront cost. It'll have to be, and I, as far as budget goes, Dave, I don't know, it'd probably hit this year's budget, correct?
Thanks. Had to unmute. We actually, working closely with Linda Warho, this is a one-time expenditure, Katie. And because we didn't do much in the way of curriculum adoption or expenditures this year, we think we can cover it with this current year's budget, 2021. There are some accounting hijinks when you purchase for next year out of this year's. You just have to note it so that the auditors don't get grumpy, as auditors might. But we think we can pretty much cover that out of this year's budget by and large. And if not, there is some money in next year's budget to close the gap. But our recommendation is to purchase the 6 years worth of Wit and Wisdom. We know it takes a while to implement and become proficient as teachers in new materials. So this allows us to schedule PD during the summer and going into August when our staff return to the campus.
Thanks.
And a quick question. I remember when these first were mentioned, there was another company that we didn't choose. And which ones are the ones that we chose? Are these the ones that choose or use original literature or written literature just for this program? Do you know?
So I can speak to that. The company that mostly wasn't chosen is a company called Amplify. which is a really well-respected program. But these use a mix of targeted materials as well as authentic literature. The ARC is the American Reading Company, and it uses leveled authentic literature as well as thematic units, which are in alignment with the IB recommendations, as well as the standards that we need to teach in Colorado. So ARC is viewed as a phenomenal resource for that. And we're very pleased that the middle school settled on, or grades 6 through 8 settled on ARC. And, we are even going to have a conversation eventually about possibility extending it up into grades 9 and 10. But it is real books and real reading, and it's thematic there. The Wilson, if you're not familiar with it, Barbara Wilson is one of the pioneers in dyslexic research and acquisition of literacy, early childhood literacy, and a pioneer in that field. And again, that's READ Act compliant, even recommended. And then the Great Minds, Wit and Wisdom is a knowledge building component, because it turns out that if you just teach skills in isolation, there's no way to acquire either knowledge or comfort and proficiency in reading. So Great Minds, Wit and Wisdom, it's kind of like, in the field, they use this notion of a reading rope, and each strand is different pieces. So the Wilson Foundations and the Great Minds, Wit and Wisdom, there you are. Thank you, Theron. Kind of weaves it all together. So it's the language comprehension, and then the foundations is the phonemic foundational work. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Darren.
So the next thing that we're looking at is the Learn Zillion illustrative math program, another group that we did with the middle school presentation that you saw last week. So what it looks like as far as costs go, we'll be looking at around $41,000 for the curriculum materials and $9,500 for the accompanying PD. Right now, just a reminder that we did use this year in 5th and 6th grade. This will be expanded to 5th through 8th, including the high school algebra courses as well. So that would be the expansion of the program. And obviously having the embedded PD and having the digital learning modules that will be a part of it as well are all part of the Learn Zillion curriculums. And it's using the highest rated curriculum we have right now, math curriculum, which is illustrative math.
Yeah, Theron, and I just wanted to ask and just validate, I guess, these are highly rated curriculums, correct? And
that is correct.
Okay. That might be something useful to put in, and just thinking also about monitoring reports. Well, I have some ideas about that. I'll share them with Dave. I think those are important things to include, just as information for the community.
Sure.
That these are, top of the line curriculums that we're implementing.
Exactly. And I just like to point out too, there's a lot of assessment features with these curriculums. And I don't want to get into the weeds because Dave wanted me to keep this 40,000 foot view, but I do want, at some point, we can definitely go over what that's going to look like in the future, Jonathan. So just know that I agree with you. That's a great thing that we can share with the community when we have these conversations on how they're going next year after the rollout. And looks like I lost a slide there. Eliza, I lost my screen there. Can you pull up the last slide? The last slide was the IB, PYP, and MYP program. Basically, there was if you can just go to the last slide, thank you. The application fees will be paid. We're actually submitting the applications today. A huge thank you to Eileen Knapp and the committee for making that happen. I am pleased to announce that we've hired a PYP and an MYP coordinator for those programs. Our PYP coordinator will be Deirdre Bennett at the elementary school, and Sarah After will be the MYP coordinator at the middle school. So currently we have $8,000 in application costs that will be a part of that. We're projecting the PD at around 50,000, and just a reminder that each one of those positions are 0.5. FTE. So we're looking at about 1.0 of reallocated FTE. This is not an addition to the original FTE of each building. We just kind of move some things around in order to create the vacancy for that. So
Darren, what's the other half of that position then?
each one is a 0.5, Katie. Oh, so the other half for each one of them is being decided right now by the building principals. There's multiple vacancies and they're using, I believe the middle school's already been decided. Is that right, Amy? And it's the librarian position. Did you want to talk about that at all? I know the mute's tough today.
Yeah, if I
Sorry,
could
the
add,
mute is hard. Yeah, no, we are planning to combine it with our library media specialist position so that we can really work on the curricular alignment and the media resources along with the IB implementation. So Sarah After will be a great fit in both of those roles and is pretty excited about that change.
Thank you.
Great question. Dave, did you want to say anything else?
no, I just didn't, Amy was finding her mute button, so I was gonna underscore what Amy just shared with the board that, and, you know, I think it's a really super strong fit to have Sarah going in as the middle years and then the media coordinator. And I think Chris Bastian, if you're still on here, conceptually, at least we were thinking Deirdre would do halftime MTSS and halftime PYP. Is that correct? And maybe Chris dropped off,
Well,
but
and
I know that was the thinking there.
Yeah, I think
And,
they're looking at reading, support and reading.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
Thanks. So the positions will be well utilized is the point. Any
Great.
other,
Back to you.
yeah, other questions for Theron?
I have
Ju-
just one quick question. The illustrative math, does that work well with the curriculum that is in the elementary school and the high school?
So we really are wanting to get that. It's definitely going to be something that will fit well with each program. I know that when we had the math meeting, we actually had representation from both the elementary and the high school there when we made the decision, Susan, and we were looking at exactly how those things would dovetail together, which is one of the reasons why you now see the ninth grade algebra. They'll start to adopt some of the process. But you're going to see that we'll make sure that that they have a good fit on each end. And I think that Lauren Nitty also talked about how that would work for the 4th to 5th grade transition. So we did have those conversations. Clearly, we have lots to do around that, but just a reminder too, that we were using some of the illustrative math in the 5th grade this year, part of that transition. And with Learn Zillion, also just to remind the board, they also have that pre-adopted curriculum of the 6-8 accelerated to have algebra be the default class in the 8th grade. So that's the direction we're heading.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Great. Any other questions for Theron? I think we're good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. So we skipped board members update, but I think if nobody has anything urgent, we'll skip it permanently.
So I do have a question for Dave though. And I don't know where that falls in this agenda. Is now appropriate? I know we had asked for an update on where we are with High Flex and that kind of understanding. What is the planned program rollout for the parents to understand and for other community partners to understand how that is going to work for the fall? How is that working through the summer while we're not meeting?
Sure, and good question. We had talked about doing it at this agenda, but then decided not to do the full presentation just for time's sake. But we had a design meeting with secondary teachers earlier this year, then earlier this month. And then we met with AVSC and their education director, as well as Amy and Sarah and Becky and Theron. We all met with AVSC to discuss how to make things work. We're going to have a couple more design meetings with teachers. Mr. Durham will be tasked with acquiring some of the technology necessary, and it's portable and flexible. And then we're going to roll that out probably sooner than later so that parents can sign up and make their interests and inclinations known before the school year starts. So we'll
Can
be
we
doing
give
active reach
parents-
out.
Sorry, can we give parents some kind of a heads up? I mean, I think we need to communicate this clearly, even if the communication is more is coming.
Sure.
It would be I think it'd be helpful as people make plans, as well as it's not just AVSC, there are other, community partners.
Yep.
IBSC is clearly the biggest one, but I think the more we can communicate while we're not communicating over the summer, the better.
Yeah, and we'll communicate the key concepts, which is that we're going to support flexibility and the needs of the students to capture and continue their learning while they pursue other interests. So we will definitely work on that communication in the next couple of weeks. Candidly, in the crush of the last couple of weeks, we haven't had much time to work on it. So that's where we are, but I appreciate the question.
I think we are, unless Dave, tell me if I'm skipped anything. I think we're up to future agenda items.
I believe you're correct, Madam President.
Okay. So we are still, I guess we don't know yet about summer retreat. It's looking like closer to August, if at all. Or
That's correct. We're on both sides of the coin, trying to find time to get together as a board, as well as trying to align the person we want to work with. But we will continue that effort, and you'll be hearing from Eliza about that shortly. But hopefully in early August, we can do a retreat to help establish the priorities for moving forward.
And of the 4 board members here, are there dates in early August that you won't be here or available?
The only dates I would potentially be available are the 2nd through the 5th.
Okay.
Me too.
We're talking that first week.
Yep.
You're muted, Susie.
Sorry, that could work, Jonathan, 2 through 5, if it works out with the people Dave will be looking into.
I would not be available in person, but I'm happy to be available remotely.
Okay. All right.
Fortunately, sorry.
Okay. And then I think we've already done the debrief. And so, Jonathan, you have a question? You're muted. Everybody's muted today.
Susie, sorry. Yeah, that first week of August is my 25th wedding anniversary, so I doubt I will be available.
I thought you were going to say.
Or I won't be married. I mean, you could pick.
We'll keep working on.
We'll keep working on that.
It may
Sorry.
need to be the fall.
All right. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn, and I just wanted to really thank everybody for this year. I hope everyone enjoys their summer. Really appreciative of Dave's leadership and all the hard work that went into this. Darren, everyone, all the teachers, AEA. It's impossible to list everybody, but we just want to say thank you from the board to everyone who helped us through this year, and the accomplishments that we have to be, I think, all proud of. An important one today as well. So thank you, everybody.
If I could add to that, I'd also like to thank the parents in the community and the kids for sticking with it too. And being able to pivot as everyone else that Jonathan mentioned was able to pivot. Recognize it's a hard, especially, for the kids. It's been a hard year for them. So good job, kiddos.
Yep, I agree. And I feel like we've set ourselves up really well for what looks to be like more of a normal year next year, where we can just concentrate on student experience, student achievement, and the things that we're here for. So that's exciting and hopeful, and just really all want to thank everyone for what was an incredibly challenging year, but I think we have come through it pretty well.
Amazingly well.
Yep.
Thanks to everybody's participation and hard work. We didn't get a second. I do ditto, good. I do ditto everything Katie, Jonathan, and Susan said. And we have a second. Eliza, do you want to call roll?
Certainly. Katie Frisch.
Aye and bye-bye.
Susan Morrell.
Aye.
Jonathan Nickel.
Aye.
Dwayne Romero left, and Susie Stinnett.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Great
Okay.
meeting.
Staff, enjoy the summer without us bugging you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks to all the teachers.